All right, let's dive into this explainer and tackle mastering TikTok video export settings. If you're watching this, you know the struggle. You don't just want good content, right? You want your stuff looking absolutely pristine. So today, we're going to break down the exact step-by-step parameters you need to use based entirely on how the platform actually processes your files behind the scenes. So why do your flawless edits look pixelated on TikTok? Honestly, we've all been there. You spend hours, literally hours, perfecting an edit on your computer, getting everything super precise, and then you upload it, and TikTok's aggressive compression just chews it up. It spits it back out looking all crunchy, pixelated, or just kind of sad and washed out. It is so incredibly frustrating when a file looks flawless on your hard drive, but absolutely terrible to the rest of the world. Well, let's talk about decoding TikTok quality drops. The secret to beating the algorithm here? It's actually not what you might think. It isn't about giving the app the absolute highest quality, uncompressed file you can muster. It's really about feeding the system exactly what it expects, so it doesn't have to guess or, work overtime processing your footage. And that whole process starts right at your baseline canvas. That baseline canvas is completely non-negotiable. You've got to stick to a strict 1080 by 1920 pixel resolution at a 90/16 aspect ratio. That is the native format for the platform, and understanding this is the absolute foundation for everything else we're going to cover today. But what happens when you shoot your footage in something way bigger, like 4K? Okay, this brings us to a massive, widespread myth, the idea that you should manually downscale your 4K footage to 1080p yourself before exporting. The reality? Actually, scratch that manual downscale idea. If you shot your video in 4K, export it in 4K and let TikTok handle the downscaling. If you try to manually downscale it yourself, you're just introducing quality loss before TikTok even applies its own compression pass. It's basically hitting you with a double penalty. Moving right along to frame rate. 30. That is the absolute magic number you need to remember here. Seriously, forget about trying to make things look insanely smooth with massive frame rates. Pushing higher frame rates simply increases your file size, and there's absolutely zero visible improvement after the platform transcodes it. Look, even if you have fast motion content that you shot at 60 frames per second, TikTok is just going to serve it to viewers at 30 FPS regardless. So uploading at 60, you're just unnecessarily inflating your file size and handing the compression algorithm way more data to just throw in the trash. Okay, so that builds right into our next major pillar, cracking codecs and bit rates. Because let's be real, getting how your video is packaged wrong is a one-way ticket to Artifact City, where everything just looks super blocky and digital. To guarantee universal support, you absolutely must export using the H.264 video codec, and you want to lock that into high profile, level 4.2 or higher. This specific combo, it's pretty much the undisputed gold standard for social media platforms. Now, I know you might be tempted to use newer, super efficient formats to save space, but watch out, because H.265 uploads may actually fail completely or process way slower on TikTok's backend. Just stick to the universally supported H.264 to make sure your processing is smooth sailing. Now for bit rates. Think of this as the Goldilocks zone for 1080p at 30 frames per second. If you drop below 8 megabits per second, you're going to get those nasty visible artifacts. It's going to look messy. But if you climb way above 20 megabits per second, you get absolutely no visible gain on mobile screens. None. So your sweet spot is right in the middle, 10 to 15 megabits per second. That gives you maximum clarity without triggering the app's heavier compression. All right, your visuals are perfectly locked in, but we're not done, because feeding the audio algorithm is just as critical. A stunning video is instantly ruined if the sound gets horribly compressed. So, here are the exact sound settings you need to dial in. Format your audio as AAC, make sure it's in stereo, and set your sample rate to either 44.1 or 48 kilohertz. For the bit rate, you want to keep it floating somewhere between 128 and 256 kilobits per second. And here is a quick pro tip for you. Always export your audio at that maximum 256 kilobits per second limit. Why? Because you are giving TikTok's aggressive audio compression more data to work with. Having that little extra data buffer really prevents severe degradation when the platform inevitably shrinks your file down. Okay, finally, let's talk about color space and solve the mystery of what we call the HDR washout effect. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever wondered why your perfectly color-graded videos suddenly look super gray and dull the second they go live online? The solution here is actually surprisingly simple. Your absolute best practice is to make sure your video's color space is set strictly to Rec 709 before you hit export. That is the standard color space that the vast majority of mobile devices and platforms are looking for. When you compare Rec 709 to HDR, high dynamic range, the problem is obvious. TikTok just does not properly support HDR right now, meaning any HDR footage you try to push through their system is almost always going to appear totally washed out to the viewer. You might think, hey, I'm providing richer, more vibrant colors, but since the platform doesn't have the proper support for it, it completely destroys your contrast. So as TikTok's algorithm continues to evolve, will future-proofing your content today actually hurt your quality tomorrow? It's a fascinating question. Because as we've seen throughout this explainer, handing the platform way too much data, whether that's an unnecessary 60 frames per second, a massive 20+ bit rate, or unsupported HDR colors, it actually breaks your upload. So is trying to future-proof your content by maximizing every setting doing more harm than good? For now, yes, absolutely. Sticking to what the platform actually supports today is your best bet for pristine quality. Keep these exact parameters in your back pocket for your next upload, and you will see exactly what I mean.